Okay, you've heard me talking about it. Tech Tour Live is coming up here in March. You can get your tickets, including individual tickets or tables, by going to techtourlive.com. And our closing keynote speaker at this year's event is Gregor Jeffrey, and he joins me right now. Hey, Gregor, how's it going?
Hey, Sean. It's good to chat with you again.
Yeah, it's great to chat with you. I'm really looking forward to this year's Tech Tour Live trip across the prairies, 4 cities, 4 days.
So am I.
Yeah. What are you going to be talking about at this year's event?
Well, I take a really interesting take on communication. You and I have chatted about this before. You know how passionate I am about helping people understand how to interact and communicate with people who are often different than them. The premise that I talk about is that we all think really differently. The people who are listening right now, we all know there are situations where you're talking to someone, you're trying to explain something important, and it doesn't always land. You just know the conversation's not going the way you want it. And this is something that I really struggled with in my own life. In my own work, working with the military, I was not a good communicator. And people tried to help me, they gave me advice, but I never seemed to get any better at it. So I tried to figure out what the problem was, and a few years ago, I discovered that it really comes down to the way our brains work, the way we process information. And if we can understand that, we can learn to navigate difficult conversations. We can learn to speak to colleagues and suppliers and family members and friends in a way that works for them without changing who we are. And that's really what I'm going to be talking about. How do we communicate with people in a way that works for them, so that we can navigate our life and our business in the easiest way possible?
Well, and I think on any farm or ranch across the country, when things, there's kind of a communication breakdown, and we've all experienced them.
Yeah.
Whether it's in business or in family life, it's so easy to say, you know what, we need to communicate better. But that is such a 300,000-foot comment. It really doesn't get you any further ahead.
No, it doesn't. And this is what people used to tell me. They say, Gregor, come on, you need to learn how to communicate better. And I desperately wanted to figure out how to do it, but no one could explain how. We all know the situations, like in a difficult conversation with a family member. You know, family businesses are complex, and we're dealing with people who think really differently than us sometimes. So how do you speak to them in a way that works without being fake or artificial? How do you get your point across when you only have a couple minutes? How do you speak in a way that works when you're in a rush and need to get something resolved really quickly? You know, there's science behind this. That's what makes it so interesting. It's not something that we just need to figure out on our own. We can actually use science and research to give us techniques to make it work. And that's what I get really excited about. There are ways to help even the people who are already good at it, or the people like me who struggle with it, to immediately get better. And that's what I like so much about it.
Well, we've obviously seen a huge jump in digital communication tools, which has added ease to be able to get a hold of people for short answers, if required. But it also creates more issues potentially on the missing of the context of a comment.
Yeah.
But we've also seen, Gregor, like a decrease in that old school, I'll say, face-to-face contact, which is still so powerful.
It's still the ultimate. You know, you look at communication, and face-to-face is way up there on effectiveness. You know, research shows that even on the telephone, we're losing the ability to have those nuances of expression. We all know if you want to talk about something really important or something challenging, it's best to sit across the table or go for a walk with someone and talk about it. And research proves this time and time again. And a lot of the people who are listening to this know this. This is why they know face-to-face is the way to resolve the tough conversations. But the problem is we don't always have the time. You're right. Sometimes we're texting or we're leaving voicemails. And we try our best, but they don't work as well. The good thing is, though, Sean, that the same rules that we're going to talk about when applying to verbal communication apply to digital as well. So we learn that there's a way to write things down, even text or send an email or leave a voicemail, that works for people. The challenge, of course, is we're often rushed. There's so much going on. People are running these very complex businesses. So we're often rushing something that's probably the most important part of our business, the communication piece, like you said. So once again, we have to really just be aware of what we're doing and how we can make it work for the people we work with and the people we live with.
You mentioned the walk and talk. Why is that such an effective tool?
You know, there's some interesting research behind this, and then there's also some anecdotal examples from just speaking with people. Research shows that when you're walking with someone, it's a much better way because you're not as distracted sometimes. you're able to sort of focus on the person. But the real reason I believe this works is anyone who has kids will know that kids are often the most expressive, or they talk about things they don't normally talk about, sometimes when you're driving them in a car and they're sitting in the back seat. And so parents told me all about this. They're like, why is it that when the kid's in the back seat, they sometimes tell me things they don't normally tell me when we're at home? And it turns out it's about eye contact. So if you sit across the table from someone and ask them to tell you about their day or what's going on, it's sometimes quite intimidating when you're staring at someone and having direct eye contact. The great thing about the walk and talk that farmers and ranchers are famous for and works so well is that you're not looking at the person directly in the eye. So you're walking beside them. And so sometimes people are able to express their ideas and what they want to talk about in a much easier way. It's less intimidating. So I always encourage for people to do that. Go for a walk and talk it through. It's a much better way than doing it than on the phone or through text.
Okay, I hold on here. Not looking them in the eye allows them to open up more, but I can remember as a kid my dad saying, "Look me in the eye." So does that increase the amount of the probability that someone's able to tell maybe a little bit of a fib or stretch the truth?
Yeah, you're right. You're right. There's a flip side to this, of course, is that by not looking someone in the eye, sometimes people don't always tell the entire truth. So we're trying to balance these things out. It is a very subtle science and art, communication. So we're asking people to try and figure out, using science and research, what's the best method for them. You're right. People tend to talk more when they're walking side by side with someone, but are they actually telling the entire truth is a whole other part of the research that gets very complicated. The interesting thing about it, though, is that what we're going to see is most of the things that we believe are right turn out to be right when it comes down to science. It's just sometimes we ignore our own instincts. And we send a text instead of meeting for someone across the table, or we write an email or leave a voicemail instead of actually going for a walk and talking with them. We know that it's best. We have that gut instinct that that's the best way to do it. But like we said, sometimes we get rushed and we don't do what we know is best when it comes to communication.
We've been talking to Gregor Jeffrey. He's our closing keynote speaker at this year's Tech Tour Live. You can get your individual tickets or tables at techtourlive.com. Gregor, thanks a lot for joining me here today.
Thank you so much. I'm really looking forward to it.